Admiral Krixon stood at the observation deck of the flagship Celestial Dominance, his four-fingered hands clasped behind his back as he gazed down at the blue marble called Earth. The bioluminescent patches on his scaled skin pulsed with barely contained amusement. 300 years of interstellar conquest, and never had he encountered a species so entertaining. "Commander Raxel, bring up the analysis of their primary defense systems again," Krixon ordered, his mandibles clicking with each word. The holographic display flickered to life, casting an eerie blue glow. Krixon let out a sound that might have been a laugh, though to human ears it would have resembled grinding gears. Projectile weapons? In the year 2157? How perfectly primitive. He moved closer to the display, his towering 9-foot frame casting long shadows across the deck. "And these, what do they call them?" "Aircraft carriers, Admiral. Massive floating vessels that carry smaller flying machines." "Ah, yes, carriers. Powered by nuclear fission reactors." Krixon shook his head, bioluminescent patches flaring bright orange with mirth. "They still split atoms for power, like children playing with rocks." The bridge crew shared knowing looks and suppressed chitters of laughter. They had conquered 12 star systems with their quantum-phase technology and dark matter drives. These humans, with their crude rockets and chemical explosives, would barely register as a challenge. "Send another probe to their largest military installation," Krixon commanded, turning to face the massive viewing window again. "I want to see these missiles they are so proud of." The probe's feed appeared on the main screen, showing rows of intercontinental ballistic missiles housed in their silos. To Krixon's eyes, they might as well have been ancient spears lined up for display. His species had moved beyond such simplistic weapons centuries ago. Admiral Raxel spoke up, mandibles twitching nervously. "There is something odd about their defense pattern. They maintain these old weapon systems despite having developed basic ion propulsion for their space stations. It seems inconsistent." Krixon waved a dismissive hand, his scaled fingers catching the starlight. "Sentimentality, nothing more. These humans cling to their history like parasites to a host. They lack the vision to embrace true power." He paused, watching as city lights bloomed across Earth's night side. "Perhaps we should give them a demonstration of real weapons technology." The bridge crew straightened at their stations, anticipation rippling through their bioluminescent patches like waves of light. They had done this 11 times before. Show up at a primitive world, demonstrate their overwhelming superiority, and accept their immediate surrender. "Prepare a targeting solution for one of their orbital defense platforms," Krixon ordered, his voice carrying the weight of countless victories. Something small, just enough to show them the futility of resistance. As the weapons officers began their calculations, Krixon allowed himself a moment of reflection. In all his years of conquest, he had developed a certain appreciation for the moment when a species realized its own insignificance. Some fought back with their primitive weapons, others surrendered immediately, but all eventually bowed before superior technology. Admiral, one of the sensor operators, called out, "We are detecting unusual energy signatures from their surface installations. They appear to be powering up their nuclear arsenals." Krixon's bioluminescence flickered with genuine amusement. "Let them. Their missiles will shatter against our quantum shields like waves against a cliff." He turned to address his bridge crew, spreading his arms in a gesture of magnanimous superiority. "Watch closely, my fellow warriors. This is how you deal with a species that still thinks throwing rocks is a valid form of warfare." Little did Admiral Krixon know, as he stood there basking in his own perceived superiority, that his dismissal of humanity's primitive weapons would soon become the greatest miscalculation of his military career. But for now, he simply watched Earth rotate below, counting the hours until these humans would learn their place in the galaxy. The United Nations Security Council chamber buzzed with tension as Admiral Krixon's holographic form materialized before the assembled delegates. Commander Maya Rodriguez stood at the central podium, her decorated uniform bearing the insignia of Earth's combined defense force. At 45, she had earned every medal through grit and strategic brilliance, though to Krixon, they might as well have been children's stickers. "Your species has 24 Earth hours to surrender control of your military assets," Krixon announced, his translated voice echoing through the chamber. "We are prepared to be merciful, given your technological limitations." Commander Rodriguez maintained perfect composure, though her knuckles whitened slightly as she gripped the podium. "Perhaps, Admiral, you would be interested in observing our defensive capabilities before making such demands." Krixon's bioluminescent patches pulsed with what the translation software identified as condescending amusement. Very well. Entertain me. The massive screens behind Rodriguez came to life, displaying footage from that morning's demonstration. A formation of F-35 Lightning E screamed across the sky, their hypersonic missiles striking targets with pinpoint accuracy. Submarine-launched ballistic missiles breached the ocean's surface like metal leviathans, their multiple warheads demonstrating the precision that had been perfected over centuries of warfare. Fascinating, Krixon interrupted, his mandibles clicking rapidly. You launch explosive devices using controlled chemical reactions? How quaint. Commander Raxel, show them a proper weapons system. The hologram shifted, revealing a small drone no larger than a tennis ball. It emitted a brief pulse, and a target vessel 3 miles away simply ceased to exist. No explosion, no debris, just empty ocean, where a destroyer had been moments before. Quantum displacement technology, Raxel explained, his voice dripping with satisfaction. We simply remove things from this dimension. No mess, no radiation, no primitive chemical reactions. Rodriguez watched the demonstration without flinching. Impressive. Though I notice your quantum displacement field takes 3 seconds to charge. An irrelevant detail, Krixon dismissed. Your projectile weapons would never reach us through our shields. The Security Council members shifted uncomfortably as Rodriguez brought up another display. These are our current nuclear capabilities. 10,000 warheads, each capable of. Laughter interrupted her, a strange harmonic sound as the entire alien command staff joined their admiral in amusement. Nuclear fission? You might as well threaten us with sharpened sticks. Our shields were designed to withstand the energy output of small suns. Rodriguez pressed a button, and the screen showed something that made even Krixon pause, if only briefly. Rows upon rows of what appeared to be antique weapons, conventional artillery, ballistic missiles from every era, even ships that belonged in museums. You keep obsolete weapons functional, Raxel asked, genuine confusion crossing his alien features. What possible purpose could that serve? Humans are sentimental about their history, Krixon answered for them, his bioluminescence pulsing with smug satisfaction. They cannot bear to part with relics of their violent past. Rodriguez allowed herself the smallest of smiles, something like that. This meeting grows tiresome, Krixon declared. You have shown us exactly what we expected, a species clinging to outdated methods of warfare. Your 24 hours begin now. Try not to waste them testing weapons that became obsolete before your ancestors learned to split atoms. As the alien holograms faded, the chamber erupted in panicked discussion. Rodriguez remained at the podium, studying the space where Krixon had been. A junior officer rushed to her side, panic evident in his voice. Commander, they just disabled 3 of our orbital defense platforms. Their technology we can't possibly. Lieutenant Rodriguez cut him off quietly. Did you notice how their shield harmonics fluctuated when they demonstrated the quantum displacement weapon? I know, Commander. Her smile widened fractionally. They did. And do you know what else I noticed? They have no concept of what humanity does best, adapting old solutions to new problems. She turned to face the chaos in the chamber. Send word to all commands. Operation Retrograde is now in effect. As she strode from the podium, Rodriguez allowed herself a moment of gratitude for humanity's so-called primitive stubbornness. Sometimes the best way forward was to take a step back, about 70 years back. In this case, Admiral Krixon watched with mounting satisfaction as another human space station vanished from orbit. 3 days into the invasion, and Earth's defensive grid was collapsing exactly as predicted. His bridge crew worked with practiced efficiency, their bioluminescent patches glowing with the cool blue of professional satisfaction. Status report, he commanded, moving between the holographic displays that showed Earth's rapidly diminishing military assets. Commander Raxel manipulated the tactical display with a flourish of his scaled fingers. Their orbital defenses are at 27% capacity. Ground-based installations are withdrawing to fortified positions. They appear to be consolidating their forces around major population centers. How predictable, Krixon mused, mandibles clicking in amusement. Show me their nuclear launch facilities. The display shifted, revealing dozens of missile silos across various continents. Most showed minimal activity, with some appearing completely abandoned. Scattered across the tactical map were indicators of human military units in full retreat, leaving behind what appeared to be substantial weapons caches. They are abandoning their forward bases with surprising speed, noted Lieutenant Vex, the youngest of Krixon's command staff. Our intelligence suggested humans would be more stubborn. Krixon dismissed the concern with a wave of his hand. They realized the futility of resistance. Those bases they are abandoning? Filled with those precious antique weapons they showed us. Perhaps they finally understand how useless such relics are against our technology. On the main viewing screen, a formation of human aircraft scattered before a single alien interceptor. The humans' evasive maneuvers were actually quite impressive, but their weapons might as well have been spitballs against the quantum shields. Deep in an underground bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains, Commander Rodriguez watched the same retreat with a very different expression. Around her, dozens of operators coordinated the seemingly chaotic withdrawal of Earth's forces. The bunker walls were lined with antiquated equipment that would have looked more at home in a Cold War museum than a modern military installation. "Status of Operation Retrograde?" she asked, her voice carrying across the bustling command center. Colonel Marcus Henderson, a weathered veteran with steel-gray hair, approached with a tablet displaying a complex series of deployments. Phase 1 is proceeding ahead of schedule. The aliens are taking the bait. They believe we are abandoning our forward positions in panic. And the special preparations. Henderson allowed himself a grim smile. All units report ready. The old birds are armed and waiting. General Thompson says his artillery crews have completed their modifications. Marines are in position with the vintage equipment. Rodriguez nodded, studying the massive display showing the aliens' fleet movements. Krixon was playing exactly into their hands, spreading his forces to occupy the supposedly abandoned bases. Each alien ship that moved to secure a deserted human facility was another piece positioning itself on a cosmic chessboard. Back on the celestial dominance, Krixon received another report of human forces in retreat. "They are burning through their modern weapons quickly," he observed. "Soon they will have nothing left but those museum pieces they were so proud of." Admiral Krixon interjected, "I am detecting unusual power signatures from several of their abandoned facilities. Should we investigate?" Krixon made a dismissive gesture, probably trying to overload their reactor cores. "Let them destroy their own infrastructure. It saves us the effort." His bioluminescence pulsed with bright orange satisfaction. "Prepare the final advance. I want our forces in position to secure their remaining military installations within 6 hours." As the alien fleet began its confident advance toward Earth's surface, they remained oblivious to the true nature of humanity's retreat. In secret bunkers and hidden facilities across the globe, soldiers worked with practiced precision on weapons that hadn't seen action in decades. Engineers made modifications to artillery pieces that predated the digital age. Launch crews ran final checks on missiles that had been waiting silently in their silos since the Cold War. Commander Rodriguez studied the tactical display one final time before turning to her staff. "Send the signal to all commands. Phase 2 begins in 3 hours. "The aliens still haven't detected the pattern?" Henderson asked quietly. "They see exactly what they expect to see," Rodriguez replied. "A primitive species abandoning its outdated weapons and falling back in disarray. Their arrogance blinds them to the truth. Sometimes the oldest solutions are the best ones." As the hours ticked by, Krixon's fleet moved with increasing confidence through Earth's orbital space, never suspecting that humanity's apparent retreat was actually an elaborate trap. The Admiral stood on his bridge, watching Earth's night side rotate into view, the scattered lights of cities twinkling below. In those final hours before Phase 2 began, he remained utterly convinced of his victory. Never once considering that these primitives might have learned something in their long history of warfare that his technologically superior species had forgotten. The celestial dominance descended through Earth's upper atmosphere like a medieval king leading a victory parade. Its quantum shields rippled with overlapping fields of exotic particles, each layer designed to counter specific types of attack. The protective barrier glowed with a faint purple hue, transforming the massive warship into something that resembled a malevolent star. "All ships report ready for final approach," Commander Krixon announced, his scaled fingers dancing across the holographic controls. "Shield harmonics are optimal, no sign of significant resistance." Admiral Krixon stood at his command post, watching streams of data flow past. The quantum shields were his species' greatest achievement, a defense system that operated on 11 different dimensional frequencies simultaneously. Energy weapons were shifted into parallel dimensions. Kinetic impacts were neutralized by micro-adjustments in local space-time. Even nuclear detonations would simply wash over the shields like water over rocks. Status of human military response, Krixon asked, though his tone suggested he barely cared about the answer. Lieutenant Vex brought up a tactical display. Their remaining orbital platforms are attempting to target our lead ships. Primitive laser weapons, nuclear-tipped missiles, tungsten rod accelerators. He paused, mandibles twitching in amusement. The weapons cannot penetrate even our outer shield layer. On the main screen, a human missile detonated against the shields of a support cruiser. The nuclear fireball bloomed briefly before being shunted into another dimension, leaving the alien vessel completely untouched. Their orbital defense grid is down to 12% capacity, Raxel reported. Ground-based installations continue to go dark. We are detecting widespread power failures across their military networks. Krixon's bioluminescent patches pulsed with satisfaction. They destroy their own infrastructure in desperation. How primitive, he turned to address his bridge crew. Begin the final approach. Target their remaining military commands for quantum displacement. The alien armada moved like a swarm of predatory fish, their ship's shields creating a tapestry of purple light across the sky. On the ground, the last remaining human forces appeared to be in complete disarray. Modern defense systems were shutting down. Military bases were going dark. The few remaining human ships were either retreating or being swatted aside like insects. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, Commander Rodriguez watched the alien advance with intense concentration. The bunker's ancient analog displays showed the positions of Krixon's fleet with surprising accuracy, tracked by systems that predated modern computers. They are proceeding exactly as predicted, Colonel Henderson reported, his voice tight with controlled tension. Their shield configurations haven't changed since their first demonstration. Rodriguez nodded, her eyes fixed on the central display. Status of our remaining orbital assets. The last modern platforms are engaging as planned. Making a good show of it, Henderson paused, checking another report. The aliens are buying it. They think we are throwing everything we have at them in desperation. Above them, the Celestial Dominance led its fleet through the debris field of destroyed human satellites and defense platforms. Krixon observed Earth's surface with the satisfaction of a collector examining a new acquisition. Look how their primitive weapons shatter against our shields, he commented to Raxel. Each layer of our defense represents a technological advancement they cannot even comprehend. The quantum harmonics alone took us centuries to perfect. Admiral Lieutenant Vex interrupted. We are detecting unusual readings from the surface. Multiple power signatures activating in supposedly abandoned installations. Krixon waved a dismissive hand. Probably emergency generators coming online. These humans cannot accept their inevitable defeat, he turned to his tactical officer. Show me their nuclear launch facilities again. The display revealed most of Earth's missile silos apparently powered down, their threatening weapons silent. What it didn't show what the aliens' advanced sensors failed to detect were the modifications made to those supposedly dormant weapons. In the bunker, Rodriguez received the signal she had been waiting for. All units report ready, Henderson announced. Operation Retrograde is fully armed and prepared for execution. And our guests, Rodriguez asked, her voice carrying a hint of grim amusement. They are positioned exactly where we want them. Every ship in their fleet is within the optimal engagement envelope. Henderson hesitated. Commander, if this doesn't work. It will work, Rodriguez cut him off. They based their entire defense on the assumption that we would attack them with our most advanced weapons. They never considered we might have kept our old weapons operational for a reason. Above them, Krixon's fleet continued its confident advance, their purple shields rippling with dimensional energies. The alien admiral stood on his bridge, watching the last pieces of humanity's modern defense grid crumble before his overwhelming technological superiority. Begin final approach to their capital cities, he commanded. Let them witness true power before they surrender. The alien ships moved into position, their formation spreading out to cover maximum territory. Their quantum shields, designed to counter everything from nuclear weapons to dark matter projectors, glowed with impenetrable confidence. None of them noticed that the supposedly abandoned human bases had arranged them into a very specific pattern. Like pieces on a chessboard, each alien ship had been maneuvered exactly where humanity wanted them. Commander Rodriguez stood before the ancient control panel, her hand hovering over a large red button that looked like it belonged in a Cold War movie. Around her, the command bunker hummed with the sound of vintage electronics and mechanical computers that had been carefully maintained for decades. "All stations report ready," Colonel Henderson announced. "Operation Retrograde is hot." Rodriguez took a deep breath. "Send the code phrase to all commands. Neptune rises at midnight." Above them, Admiral Krixon was about to learn why humans never threw away their old weapons. The first sign that something was wrong came from Lieutenant Vex. "Admiral," detecting multiple launches from their abandoned silos, his voice carried genuine confusion. "But these are not their modern missiles." Krixon's bioluminescent patches flickered with mild irritation. "Show me." The tactical display revealed dozens, then hundreds of launches. Ancient Titan I missiles, retired decades ago, rose from their silos. Atlas rockets, supposedly museum pieces, thundered into the sky. Even obsolete Minuteman missiles, their electronics stripped and replaced with simple mechanical guidance systems, joined the barrage. "They launch museum pieces against us," Raxel asked incredulously. "Our shields can handle weapons far more sophisticated than these relics." Krixon started to agree, then noticed something odd about the missile trajectories. "They are detonating too high," he realized suddenly. "These are not attacks, they are." The sky erupted in a series of massive nuclear explosions, deliberately positioned at high altitude. The electromagnetic pulse from dozens of synchronized detonations washed over the alien fleet like an invisible tsunami. "Shields holding," Raxel reported confidently. Then his mandibles clicked in sudden alarm. "Wait, quantum harmonics are fluctuating. The EMP is causing interference across all 11 dimensions." "Impossible," Krixon snarled. "Our shields are designed to handle any energy weapon they possess." "Yes," Rodriguez whispered in her bunker, watching the light show above. "Your shields handle energy by shunting it between dimensions. But these nuclear devices were built before we even had computers. Their EMP is simple, raw, and floods every dimensional frequency simultaneously." The alien fleet's purple shields flickered as their quantum field generators struggled to process the overwhelming flood of electromagnetic energy. Modern nuclear weapons would have been carefully contained by the shields, their energy redirected harmlessly. But these vintage weapons were crude, brutal, and their effects propagated across all dimensional frequencies at once. "Phase 2, Rodriguez commanded. "All batteries execute." Across the globe, artillery pieces that hadn't seen action since World War II roared to life. Their shells had been modified, not with modern electronics that the alien shields could detect and counter, but with simple mechanical fuses and ballistic computers that predated the transistor. Admiral Vex's voice carried panic now. "Multiple projectile launches detected, but our sensors cannot lock onto them properly. These weapons have no electronic signature." The first salvo of artillery shells slammed into the alien ship's flickering shields. Unlike modern weapons, these simple projectiles had no guidance systems to be confused, no electronic components to be redirected into other dimensions. They were just refined metal and chemical explosives, driven by pure kinetic energy and mechanical engineering. "Impossible," Krixon whispered as damage reports began flooding in. "Our shields are rated to withstand weapons thousands of times more powerful than these primitive projectiles." "That is precisely why they are working," Rodriguez explained to her staff, watching the aliens' perfect formation begin to break. Their shields were designed to counter modern threats: lasers, plasma, tactical nuclear weapons. They never considered we would keep our old weapons operational, let alone combine them with modern targeting systems. Across Earth's surface, more vintage weapons joined the attack. B-52 bombers, maintained in secret for decades, dropped modified gravity bombs guided by mechanical computers. Naval guns, their simple shells accelerated by ancient powder charges rather than electromagnetic rails, pounded the alien ships from pre-positioned battleships thought long retired. Admiral Raxel reported, his voice shaking. "Their projectiles are penetrating our outer shield layers. The quantum harmonics cannot compensate for weapons this primitive." Krixon watched in horror as his mighty fleet, designed to shrug off the most sophisticated weapons in the galaxy, began taking serious damage from technology that belonged in a museum. The elegant quantum shields, perfectly calibrated to handle multidimensional energy attacks, were being overwhelmed by the sheer brutal simplicity of mechanical weapons. They are not even targeting our vital systems, he realized with dawning terror. They are using their crude weapons to disrupt our shield generators themselves. In the bunker, Rodriguez gave the order for the final phase. Launch all remaining conventional missiles. Their shields are compromised now, hit them with everything we have got. The aliens watched in disbelief as humanity's modern weapons, previously useless against their quantum shields, began finding their marks. Hypersonic missiles screamed through gaps created by vintage artillery. Modern laser platforms, carefully coordinated with old-school flak batteries, struck with devastating precision. We have lost shield containment on 30% of the fleet, Vex reported, his bioluminescence now pulsing with fear. Our quantum field generators cannot maintain dimensional stability under this type of attack. Krixon stared at the tactical display, watching his invincible armada being systematically dismantled by weapons he had dismissed as relics. The humans had not just kept their old weapons as historical curiosities, they had maintained them as a deliberate strategic reserve. Understanding that sometimes the simplest solution was the most effective, the celestial dominance shuddered as another barrage of primitive artillery shells tore through its weakened shields. Admiral Krixon steadied himself against his command console, watching in disbelief as his mighty armada crumbled before weapons that should have been extinct centuries ago. Quantum shield generators failing across all frequencies, Commander Raxel reported, his normally steady voice cracking with panic. We have lost 37 ships to their combined weapons fire. Through the main viewport, Krixon watched a scene that defied everything he thought he knew about warfare. Ancient propeller-driven bombers flew alongside modern jets, their combined payloads overwhelming shield systems designed to counter much more sophisticated threats. World War II-era naval guns fired in perfect synchronization with laser platforms, creating gaps in defensive screens that should have been impenetrable. How he demanded, mandibles clicking in agitation. How did we not see this coming? Admiral Lieutenant Vex called out, "They are targeting our shield generators with mechanical timing fuses. Our sensors cannot predict their detonation patterns because there are no electronics to detect." The bridge rocked again as another salvo found its mark. Warning signals blared as primitive kinetic weapons, guided by technology that predated digital computers, smashed through their supposedly superior defenses. In her underground bunker, Commander Rodriguez watched the destruction of the alien fleet with grim satisfaction. "Status report," she ordered. Colonel Henderson consulted his vintage radar displays. Their formation is completely broken. 53 enemy ships confirmed destroyed. Their shield technology is failing across the board. Rodriguez nodded, studying the ancient analog displays that tracked the battle with surprising precision. They never understood, she mused, all their advanced technology, and they never grasped what humanity learned through centuries of warfare. "And what is that?" Commander Henderson asked. "Never throw away a weapon that works," she turned to face her staff. For all their dimensional physics and quantum shields, they forgot the fundamental rule of combat. Sometimes the simplest solution is the most effective. Above them, the alien fleet was in complete disarray. Ships that could have shrugged off modern nuclear strikes were being torn apart by artillery shells and unguided bombs. Their quantum shields, calibrated to handle energy weapons that could level cities, were useless against the raw kinetic force of mechanical projectiles. "We must retreat," Raxel urged as another explosion rocked the flagship. "They're primitive weapons. We never designed our shields to handle such crude attacks." Krixon stood amidst the chaos of his failing command center, his bioluminescent patches now pulsing with the sickly green of fear. Through the viewport, he watched an ancient B-52 bomber, a design that should have been retired a century ago, drop its payload with devastating accuracy. "All our technology," he whispered, "all our advancement, and we lost to weapons we thought were obsolete." The celestial dominance's shields finally collapsed under the combined assault of old and new weapons. Modern missiles streaked through the gaps created by vintage artillery, their electronic guidance systems now free to find their targets. Admiral Vex reported, his voice hollow, "We are detecting massive launches from their remaining silos. Modern warheads this time." Krixon closed his eyes, finally understanding. They were never abandoned. The humans kept every weapon they ever created, not out of sentiment, but because they understood something we forgot. The bridge crew watched in horror as humanity's modern arsenal, previously held in check by their quantum shields, joined the attack. Hypersonic missiles and energy weapons struck with devastating precision through the gaps created by primitive ballistics. In the bunker, Rodriguez received the final confirmation. Enemy flagship shields are down, Henderson reported. Their entire command and control structure is exposed. Send the message, Rodriguez ordered. To all alien ships, your superior technology has failed. Your quantum shields cannot save you. Surrender or face complete destruction. On the Celestial Dominance's failing bridge, Krixon received the transmission. Around him, ships that had conquered 12 star systems were being systematically destroyed by a species he had dismissed as primitive. Perhaps he said quietly to his terrified crew, "We are the primitive ones. We forgot that technology alone does not win wars." As the alien fleet surrendered, their mighty ships brought low by the combined might of humanity's entire military history, Rodriguez allowed herself a small smile. Send word to all commands. Operation Retrograde is complete. Humanity stands victorious. Across the globe, celebrations erupted as news of the victory spread. Modern jets flew victory rolls alongside restored WWII fighters. Artillery crews embraced beside their vintage guns that had proved so decisive. Humanity had faced its greatest threat and prevailed not through superior technology, but through the wisdom of keeping every tool at their disposal. Admiral Krixon, now a prisoner of war, stood at a window watching Earth's sunset. Behind him, Commander Rodriguez approached. "You know," she said, "there is an old human saying, those who forget history are doomed to repeat it." "We did not forget history," Krixon replied softly. "We simply thought we had outgrown it. That was our mistake." As night fell over the victorious planet, humanity's combined arsenal, from the oldest artillery piece to the newest laser platform, stood ready. They would never again be dismissed as mere relics of the past, but would be remembered as the saviors of Earth, proving that sometimes the old ways were still the best ways.